Hey, I'm Jacinta Daniel, writer, speaker, and host of Polished Gems. This podcast is for the ones rebuilding their faith, rediscovering their purpose, and returning to God, one fruit of the Spirit at a time. If that's you, hit subscribe and join the journey, because healing is possible and your faith story isn't finished yet. Hello and welcome to another episode of Polished Gems. I'm your host, Jacinta Daniel. Tonight we're talking about being equipped to carry. Your promise requires long suffering. And we've been talking about patience and long suffering all this month. And what I want to remind you is that God may have given you a promise, but that promise and often the proof doesn't show up or arrive at the same time. So between the two seasons, what we have is an enduring season, a season of processing. And what you do in that season really truly determines whether you're ready when the promise finally arrives and comes into your life. Like I said, we've been talking about this all month long because one, it's necessary. Two, it is so needed because so many people have been in their processing or their enduring season for a while now. But I encourage you to go back and listen to our other episodes for this month. We talked about being developed in the in-between of the process. We talked about why long suffering actually hurts. We talked about what the fire is really doing in you, because a lot of times we talk about refined by fire for our processing. And what does that mean? We explained it in our previous podcast. And tonight, we're going to be talking about what happens when you have a promise, but you try to chase it before the fire or the enduring process has finished preparing you to be able to carry it. So I want you to know that we understand, like, I get it. Here, we get it. You've probably been sitting in that for a while. You've probably been waiting on the promise to come to pass. What I need you to hear is that God has not forgotten you. He has not forgotten your promise. There are just things that he wants to remove with the fire to refine you. And there are also things that are necessary to carry through the promise. So let's get into this word tonight and this message tonight, because let me tell you, it will make a lot of sense for those of you who are still in your waiting. So scriptures that I want you to jot down, grab your notebook, grab your favorite journal, pen, wherever, even your voice notes in your phone. I want you to have for scripture foundation is Habakkuk 2 verse 3 in the Amplified version. And it says this, it says, "For the vision is yet for the appointed or future time. It hurries towards the goal of fulfillment. It will not fail. Even though it delays, wait patiently for it, because it will certainly come. It will not delay." The other one I want you to hold on to is Psalms 105:19 in the Amplified version. It says this, "Until the time that his word of prophecy regarding his brothers came true, the word of the Lord tested and refined him." This is actually talking about Joseph and his story. And then the third one I want you to have written somewhere or voice noted is 1 Peter chapter 5 verse 10. And it says this, "After you have suffered for a little while, the God of all grace, who imparts his blessing and favor, who calls you to his eternal glory in Christ, will himself complete, confirm, strengthen, and establish you, making you what you ought to be." So just be encouraged even by those points alone. But let's get into the meat of this as well. So first point that I want to make is the promise and the proof doesn't arrive at the same time. I know I mentioned this earlier, but let me explain why. God gives a promise first. He constantly will say, start that business, or you're going to get married, or you're going to have a baby, or you're going to own land, etc., etc., etc. But receiving the promise is not the same as being ready to walk in it. So when you receive a word, he does that and it plants a seed. That seed needs time to grow. And as far as we know, And tell me if I'm wrong. I have not seen a tree or a flower grow up overnight and immediately become the thing that it's supposed to become. There is a processing of time where that seed has to be watered. It has to get the right sunlight. It needs to receive certain nourishment from the ground and also things so it can be fed. So just like the plants, just like the trees, we have to go between the promise and its fulfillment. There is that gap. That gap is sometimes for some people, it feels like a fire season. It's the enduring, it's the long suffering, it's where patience must be made. Misunderstanding that gap is why most people chase down what hasn't come yet. It's why they try to manufacture or create or make what they thought God was giving them. So let me explain what I mean, what they thought God was giving them. If God said, this job is for you, they go ahead of schedule, ahead of time to go get a job similar or at the same company or whatever that God has said. Same with a husband. They're walking around going, hey, are you my husband? Are you my husband? Which reminds me of a book that I read when I was a child where the little uh, duck or bird was looking for his mother. We go and we start looking rather than wait on his mother in the space where he fell, rather than wait for his mother to come back. God is asking us to be processed in between. You have to understand, it's not that the promise is not coming, it's coming, but there is preparation that has to happen. There is a processing, a refinement, an enduring, long suffering season, a fire season that has to happen. This is what we call the wait. You have to remember in the word, it says Joseph received the dream as a young man, but that dream took years until it was actualized, until it was realized that he was standing there and heard the words of Pharaoh telling him that he is second in command. That did not happen immediately because he had not yet finished becoming the person who could carry it. I want to give you teaching point number 2. It is this: the promise will expose what the fire was supposed to remove. If you try to step into the promise that God has given you before your processing, before your refinement is finished, and its good work is done inside of you by the Lord himself, what's still unrefined in you actually gets exposed. So if you move prematurely, if you go after the thing prematurely, the pressure that comes from it, because there's going to be pressure no matter what, but the pressure that comes will actually, let me slow down, will actually reveal what's really there. And walking in promise will always bring pressure. But if you're not ready for the very thing that you prayed for, it can become the very thing that actually overwhelms you. The very thing that, yes, God promised it to you, but now you want to run away. God promised it to you, but now you're scared because you're like, I can't handle it. When I tell you, this hits so close to home even for me that I even have to, after this, go talk to God. Let me tell you what the waiting season is specifically preparing you to handle once the promise comes to pass. It's actually preparing you for the weight of the responsibility. One of the things, even getting married again, is there's a responsibility in marriage. There's a responsibility in that entrepreneurial endeavor that God wants you to take. There's a responsibility in having children. There's a responsibility in owning a home and owning land. There's a responsibility. Every blessing comes with maintenance. The burden of maintenance. A promise delivered is not a trophy just to sit it on a shelf. Your marriage does not sit on a shelf. That baby does not sit on a shelf. You are responsible for the maintenance of anything that God promises to give you to steward. A promise delivered, like I said, it requires your character, your energy, and your daily management of it. Of course, I'll give you a simple example just to break it down even further. You pray for a massive global business. God says, cool, I got you. That's what I want for you. The weight becomes you must now manage hundreds of employees, complicated taxes, and constant public scrutiny because not everyone's going to agree with your global business. The reality, if you have not learned management of your time, others, how to properly manage others during these quiet years, learn what systems you need to have in place, that dream of a global business could end up destroying you. The other thing to keep in mind is the discipline required to sustain it. We need discipline to sustain what God has promised us. What that means is the habits that you make right now, that you make in the waiting season, that you make in the refining season, matter because it helps you understand what's required to keep the promise. Excitement will always start the journey. You'll always be excited about that marriage. You'll always be excited about that baby, that book, that business, that whatever God says is yours to claim. However, when that fades, only strict routine, only healthy check-ins, only emotional control, guarding the fruits of the Spirit and implementing those along the journey will keep you from losing what you worked so hard to build. So I'll give you another example. Simply, the dream might be you want a healthy and strong, fit body. Not a problem. God's like, cool, we're good. The discipline is you must wake up every day with the mindset of, I'm going to work out. I'm going to eat clean. I'm going to lift weights if necessary. But I'm going to sit with God and ask, where do I need to start and grow, and be willing to grow? Because the body losing weight can hit a plateau or a stagnation, and you got to increase something or you got to take away something. So be flexible. Getting to the body that you want or the physical health that you want takes a moment because it's not only your physical health, you are also dealing with your mindset. But sustaining it takes a lifetime of just daily, unglamorous choices. The other thing to keep in mind is that the character needed to steward it well. Your character has to be developed to steward it well. The character needed to steward the promise well means that you have an inner integrity to match your outer success. It's your moral backbone. It ensures that your private reality begins to align with your public platform. So even for those people who are married, what you do in private will come to the surface. The same with raising your children. We'll see it on the surface. You want to ensure that you don't use your blessing to destroy yourself or others. I'll give you a simple example. You pray for a massive platform where your voice, your books, your webinars, sermons reach thousands, millions. And you also have this influence. Your character must have and let's say God says, okay, that's what I have for you. You must have the honesty, the humility, and the self-control to handle people's trust without exploiting it. Their trust in your voice, their trust in your words, that is not just coming from you, but that you've actually took the time to sit before God. And if something isn't right, you have the integrity to go, no, I'm not producing that. As much as I want to, and as much as I know if I put this out there, people will grab it instantly. Sometimes it's best to say, nope, I'm gonna wait. I'm gonna wait. I'm gonna wait till God gives me better instruction, till I have better clearance. I will wait. What you have to realize is talent can only get you to the top. But to maintain it, your character will keep you there. The spotlight, without having character to back your talent, the spotlight will just expose who you are and expose your cracks and where you weren't fully refined. what I want you to remember is that God isn't trying to just get you to the promise that he gave you. He's actually trying to get you ready to fully carry it through. I want you to remember Joseph's time with his brothers when they threw him in the pit. I want you to remember his time in Potiphar's house. I want you to, and Potiphar's wife accused him of being with her. And in the prison, when he was falsely sitting there accused but couldn't do anything about it, couldn't even get a word out to say, hey, this was wrong, I'm not supposed to be here. But the prison was even building his discernment and even the character that he needed. Once he became second in command, he had all those memories and those things and what the lessons were that were taught. Because what the enemy meant for evil, God worked out for his good. So before we go any further, I just want to take a quick moment here to talk about a community that I built for people who are in this exact season. Whether you're holding on to a promise, you're in the middle of the wait, or you're being equipped for what's next. This is our Fruitful Gems Patreon. Everything that we talk about on this podcast, the waiting, the refining, the becoming, that's exactly what this community was built around. So we have 3 tiers over there on our Patreon. We have our seed sower tier that receives a monthly Fruit of the Spirit biblical affirmation, because we understand that you need to declare the word of God, and what you say while you wait matters. Our fruit bearers receive a monthly reflection and response worksheet, because we need to know what God is forming in us, right? Not just so we show up daily, but because we show up because God is in the midst. And our harvest keepers, they get a monthly backstage gem candid video, a personal behind the scenes look at what God has done and is still doing, and in my own process. So I actually share words and revelations that God releases me to share. And you get a real version of myself as well as the version that you see here, but more candid, which I love. I get to share something very personal. But if you're in your waiting season right now or just starting, Patreon is where we take this conversation off the podcast and we put it into your everyday walk. So be sure to head over to Patreon. That's www.patreon.com/Fruitful Gems and join us there. Let me get into the teaching point number 3 for you. So it's chasing your promise early doesn't cancel the promise, okay? But it can complicate it. So just as I said before, God isn't going to go back on what he said. When he promised a thing, he meant it. But chasing the promise before its due season often creates a longer, harder road in walking it out fully. This isn't just about whether you're allowed to try. Of course. Could you go on and try without God? You sure can. Could you go on and try before the refinement process is completed in you? You sure can. However, is what I know about God and what God has said in his word, it is about timing. So you can attempt to rise before it's time, but it won't be fully realized until after his refinement has its perfect work in you. So what does chasing it early actually cost? Let me give you that. You carry something without the capacity to actually sustain it. That's number 1. You receive the promise without the wisdom to properly steward it. That's number 2. You end up back in a season you thought you'd already finished. That's number 3. If you need an example of what that looks like, I suggest you take a moment to read Abraham and Sarah's story about their promise. I also suggest that you take a look at the Israelites leaving Egypt. And because they were promised the promised land, but because of complaining, murmuring, and refusing to let go of the past, they circled a path that shouldn't have even taken 40 years. So it's not that, like I said, it's not that you can't get up, go forth, try to do it on your own, make the book on your own, do the business on your own, do X, Y, and Z on your own. Because sometimes God will ask us to try it out first. There are times. But sometimes, and what I've noticed, most of the time, his promises are attached to other things. They are attached to other people. So a lot of times it's something that you are going to need others actually for and with you. Because that's how he has designed it. Like your marriage is meant to be a blessing, not only to you and your family, but to others. Your children, a blessing to you, your family, and others. Like he really thinks of these things. Same with your business, your entrepreneurial endeavor. He wants it to not only bless you, your family, but it's supposed to bless others. God has it set up this way, which is why he wants to refine you, which is why he wants you in the process, which is why he desires for you to wait and complete it and wait for him to release you. Teaching point number 4 I want you to have as well is God says, wait, I'm shaping you. If he is saying that in this very moment, wait, I am shaping you. Let me explain. This is God's heart in the waiting. It's not withholding, it is shaping. It is not punishment, it is preparation. The wait isn't there to stop you from ever reaching the promise. That's not it. It's there to make sure that once it comes, you are able to hold it. You are able to maintain it. You are able to walk in it fully. So let's talk about how to endure the wait instead of escaping it. One thing we can do is submit to what's being shaped instead of resisting it. And I know you're like, okay, so how do I do that? I'm going to give you a tip. What I want you to do is shift from the complaints, as I mentioned, the Hebrew Israelites, the Israelites leaving Egypt. Shift from the complaints to gratitude. Shift from the complaints to gratitude. Grab you a journal, grab you your favorite pen, put it in voice notes. Quiet your internal noise so you can hear the lesson by journaling the goodness of God around you, even in the midst of the fire or the processing or the long suffering that you are enduring. Trust that the delay has a purpose tied directly to the promise. This is why we do what we do on the Patreon. This is why we have biblical affirmations there. So number 2, trust that the delay has a purpose tied directly to the promise. I tied it into the first one, but let me separate the two. Trust that the delay has a purpose tied directly into the promise. Let me give you a tip about that. Stop viewing the delay as a denial. Remind yourself that not yet does not mean never. Not yet does not mean never. So I've had to do this. When I've had to remind myself that I'm waiting on a thing or I'm going through a process of a thing, I will give me ideas of what to do to hold on to the promise. I'll tell you what I did specifically while I was waiting on our house. After I got married and everything, I specifically we were waiting on the process of our house because we were buying land. They had to remove the trees and make room for our home and all this other stuff. While we were waiting on that process, God actually had me create a mood board. And I make mood boards sometimes just for room aspirations or things that I like, stuff like that. But this was one that I specifically heard God say, make this so that you can pray over what's it about to become, because we had already picked out the colors of our home, the exterior colors and the interior colors. And he specifically asked me to make this mood board of every single room, of the interior and exterior colors, and literally use that to pray over. So I took the time and I made these. I talked to my family about it, make sure it was in the style or design that they kind of wanted to go with, because I know we might deviate a little bit, but that really helped me. because it was a long waiting process. And it helped me even when discouragement hit. It helped me when I felt like, oh my God, are we even going to get in this house? Because I'm sitting in it now. I'm sitting in the promise. I'm looking at it going, wow, it came to pass. But it definitely took a minute. The third thing is let the waiting build what carrying the promise will require. And the tip that I have is stop looking for shortcuts. Do not try to bypass the hard lessons or skip the necessary steps. So I'll tell you again, just like waiting on this house, there were necessary steps. There were permits that had to happen. There was the clearing of the land. There was the grading of the land. There was pouring certain structures for the foundation of it so it could sit where it needed to sit properly. That took time. And did we check in along the process? My husband and I did. However, there was no shortcuts to getting this home. I want you guys to remember God is not telling you no. He's telling you not yet because he's not done shaping you. So, with that being said, are you trying to chase a promise before the process has finished preparing you for it? What is God actually trying to shape in you right now? And what would it look like to let him finish before you reach for what's next? Don't forget you have the promise. That part is not in question. But the promise and the proof, as I stated, doesn't often arrive at the same time. There's a season of enduring the in-between and a season in doing something that nothing else could. This season is doing something that nothing else could in you. It's not that you can't get up and try and make it happen on your own. That's not it. It's that what you're reaching for won't be fully realized until you actually allow God to process you for it. So continue to endure the fire. Let him shape you and mold you, grow your character, help your discipline, show you your integrity. Because when the promise fully comes to pass, you won't just receive it, you'll have the capacity to carry it through. I want to thank you so much for taking a moment to tune in. And until next time, stay polished. Have a good evening, guys. Bye.